To close out the week, Cody and I take a look at the Texans injury report entering week 14. And is Nico Collins a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL? That was a popular debate on Twitter. We get into that and more on today's Locked On Texans.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Finally, the dynamic duo is back. Talk Texans here on this Friday's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. To our first-time listeners and viewers out there, whether you're listening in your car or watching on YouTube, thank you for checking us out today. Be sure to subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. And to all of our returning listeners lending your ear for another episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, thank you for coming back as we continue to talk Texans here on this Friday's episode. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. I know a lot of you guys like that. The easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports, just go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100, 100 big ones. I am your football analyst, John Some Sports Guy Hickman. And of course, as always, Sports Illustrated's own, the man behind the frenemy lines, looking at the Houston Texans at the NRG Stadium and, in the locker room, everything that you guys want to hear and see. You got Cody Davis, of course. We talking about the Texans as we go into the weekend. They got a game this Sunday versus the New York Jets. A couple of hot topics over the week, over the day on social media. Will Bobby Sloak be a one-and-done coach? We'll get into that. Is Nico Collins a top 10 receiver? But Cody?
I'm excited for that Nico one.
Man. We're going to kick off this segment looking at the injury report heading into week 14 versus the New York Jets and kind of give our last thoughts before we move forward for the weekend. So, Cody, what's going on? Injury report. It's all you.
I'm not overlooking the New York Jets by any chance, and I understand that the Jets defense is a hell of a lot better than their offense, especially given their quarterback situation. However, if this was a more competitive team, let's say if the Jets was in the running for the playoffs or if they was one of the top teams in the AFC, I will be a little bit more concerned with the injuries that the Texans are battling, because on Thursday, these were the players who did not participate in practice. George Fant did not participate with a hip injury, Denzel Perryman knee, Sheldon Rankins elbow and shoulder, and Dalton Schultz hamstring. Out of all of those guys that did not participate, the one guy that I'm looking at, and of course, every freaking week is on the offensive line. It's on the offensive line. And of course, I'm looking at George Fant. And I look at this from a situation, if George Fant is unable to practice on Friday, it definitely means 100% that he is not going to be good to go Sunday against the New York Jets. Not only that, you also got to consider that they are expecting bad weather, cold weather, I think rainy weather in New York, which means it's kind of going to be somewhat of a slugfest, which means they're going to have to rely upon their run, which means you're going to have to make sure that you put your best offensive lineman out there. And John, as of right now on Thursday, we did get a small opportunity to see the potential offensive line, and at right tackle, it was Charlie Heck. Now, before moving on,
that's tough.
Before moving on, I did have a quick opportunity to catch up with Charlie Heck in the locker room, and this is what he had to say.
Saw you out there, playing right tackle. Possibility you'd be playing a big role in Sunday's game. So, how do you feel?
Oh yeah, no, I'm happy to be back out there practicing. I missed a lot of time. Feels good to be back out there.
How was that? What can you share about that whole entire experience? You came into this year, there was a lot of expectations and stuff, but unfortunately, injuries and stuff kind of like got in the way. How was that whole, experience for you?
Yeah, it's always tough dealing with injuries, but I'm glad that I, had a lot of help here to rehab through it, get healthy, and now I'm happy that I'm back out here and can help the team.
Cool. Speaking of helping the team, you're coming back during a time where it's a playoff push. When you hear that, how does it make you feel?
No, it's exciting. I know, it's meaningful football in December. So there's a different vibe around the state of Texas right now, and we want to keep that rolling.
Sounds good. Thanks, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
No disrespect to Charlie Heck, and hopefully he has an opportunity to have a very productive game for the Houston Texans. However, the one thing
that's if he plays.
That's if he plays.
That George Fant
still holding out hope. However, John, you know me. If they haven't practiced by Thursday, I do not expect for them to suit up come Sunday. But by the time you guys hear this, maybe or maybe not, George Fant did return to the practice field. However, Charlie Heck, this is if he take the helm at right tackle, this is going to be his first official game of the 2023 season. I know he played last week, but it was only a few snaps on special teams. Yeah. We did have a little bit of the Charlie Heck experience. I want to say his best season might have came in 2021, if I'm not mistaken. That was during the time where they kept shifting Titus Howard from like left guard, right tackle, left tackle, and all that other stuff. But outside of 2021, I have not seen much out of Charlie Heck. So we're going to see what the injury bug has in store for the Houston Texans. However, I do want to mention Dalton Schultz is another name that I'm a little bit concerned about, only because he was limited on Wednesday but did not participate on Thursday, which means there's a possibility that he did suffer a setback.
Oh, man.
Hamstring injury, by the way. I wanted to throw that in.
And we know how here in Houston, whether it's Derek Stingley, whether it's Chris Paul, right? No matter what sport it is, we know how difficult it is for players to come back from a hamstring injury. But you know what? I do not want to downplay the loss of George Fant. George Fant is a guy who only allowed 1 sack this year, only 3 QB hits. He's been phenomenal.
That's offensive lineman.
I think that's okay to say, honestly. He's been phenomenal for Houston. He's played in every game for the Texans. I think he and Shaq Mason has really been the two most consistent foundational players for that offensive line. We know that Laramie Tunsil had been in and out of lineup for a couple of times this year, and he's had some rough moments, right? But I don't want to downplay losing George Fant. He has been good for Houston, considering the expectations for him coming into the season. And I also don't want to downplay whether or not the possibility of Sheldon Rankins not playing. Listen, we can call it a trap game. We can call it whatever type of game we want. But the fact of the matter is Houston's defense looks better when they're able to get pressure on the quarterback. And for 14 weeks now, that hasn't been the consistent case. And so, of course, we're looking for John Grenard. We're looking for, Will Anderson to have a good game. But that 3-sack game that Sheldon Rankins had that made what game was that? Was that the Carolina Panthers game?
No, Cincinnati.
It was a Cincy game. That game that gave Joe Burrow a lot of problems. You had your edge defenders doing what they had to do on the outside, and Sheldon Rankins was just able to eat up on the inside. And so I know Zach Wilson isn't the best of quarterbacks. I'm going to go as far as to say Zach Wilson is probably the worst quarterback drafted in the first 5 picks I've ever seen in my life. I didn't get a chance to watch a lot of Ryan Leaf, but going back and looking at some of those Ryan Leaf highlights, he wasn't as bad as Zach Wilson. You can probably say Jamarcus Russell, but Jamarcus Russell didn't get as many chances and tries as Zach Wilson to continue to be bad, right? And I'll continue to talk about Zach Wilson. We want to hurry up and get out of here. Zach Wilson is pretty bad at quarterback.
That really quick. That 2021 quarterback draft class, I still stand by this. I still think Davis Mills is the second best quarterback out of all of them. And with the exception of Justin Fields. I just think Justin Fields is in a bad situation.
That's true. Davis Mills is the only one this year that has completed all of his passes. My bad. Let me read. That has completed his pass. 1-on-1 for 18 yards.
I don't think Zach can do that.
I don't know. I definitely don't think so. But I mean, you still want your best guys out on the field, especially considering the circumstance that this team is in, and that's making the playoffs, right? We got to go back. I think when you look at this season on what can be and what has been, what can be the Bengals, what can be the Jacksonville Jags game the first time, the Steelers. That's what can be. What also has been 300 yards allowed to Desmond Ridder. That game, no pressure on Desmond Ridder. Losing to the Carolina Panther team that was 0-6 at that time. And when every game matters, every player matters. So I hate to see and hear the possibility of Sheldon Rankins not being on the field, but no, make no doubt about it. Not having George Fant potentially is very bad. Charlie Heck, no disrespect to him, that young man, but I just don't trust him out on the field. This is also an offensive line that has gradually allowed more sacks in the past couple of games, right? 5 sacks. They keep
losing their most important offensive lineman.
Right. They're losing starters. The line is shifting. You can give CJ Stroud out of the last maybe 15 sacks. I think he may account for maybe 4 or 5 of them. But still, they have gradually allowed more sacks. And at one point, they were not allowing any. So now, Fant was a big part of the success of being able to pass block for CJ Stroud. And having him out is kind of detrimental to the offensive line that has already been through enough, football gods. Please, bless them. Let's take the tithe and offering up, and let's also send around the prayer line number so we can, going into the playoffs, this offensive line as healthy as possible to give this team a shot, to give their quarterback a shot. Every day it seems like we got sports. Monday football, Sunday football, Thursday football. Now you got the NBA and it's in full season, and right now the NBA has been super fun to watch. Let's add to that fun meter. Let's boost that fun meter by Prize Picks, the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. The easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. You're not battling thousands of other players. You're not battling pros. You're not battling sharks. It's just you against the numbers. You pick the more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections. You sit back and you watch the winnings roll in. And with the NBA season here, also college basketball, but you also got opportunity to pick the combo projections across football and basketball from the special leagues, a league created specifically for combo projections that include 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. For example, let's say I want to look at the Jabari Smith Jr. more than less than 10.5 rebounds, Nico Collins more than less than 6.5 receptions.
Y'all better take the over, the more than.
You better take it. You better take it because the way young Barry playing and the way Nico has been playing, that could bring you some money. I'm trying to tell you right now. You also can play alongside some of Prize Picks' most favorite players, like rapper Meek Mill and Be a Boss and comedian Andrew Schultz. You can find the community plays on the promo tab on the app to view the entries from some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Super simple, super easy. Pick up your phone, download the app, or go to prizepicks.com/lockedon and use code LOCKEDONNFL. That is Locked On NFL, LOCKEDON NFL, for a first deposit match up to $100.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to this Friday installment of Locked On Texans. Man, the number one thing that I'm excited for this Sunday, Texans, Jets, my guy, Nico Collins, 9 yards away. A milestone he's probably going to accomplish as soon as the game starts on his first reception is going to crack 1,000 receiving yards for the season. Nico Collins has been tearing it up all season long, and I'm smiling. I'm happy for my guy because you guys know I've been rolling with Nico Collins ever since the Texans traded up back into the third round to draft that young guy. I think it was about 2 years ago now, or maybe a year ago, John, I came on this show. Remember, I talked about how he was just chopping it up, and he's told me he wanted to be the next great Texan receiver. And on Sunday, he's going to be the 4th receiver in franchise history to crack over 1,000 yards, joining the GOAT, Andre Johnson, Baby Goat, and D-Hop, and Brandon Cooks. Which leads us to this next topic. I think it's going to be kind of fun. Is Nico Collins now a top 10 receiver in the league? John, I'm going to let you take it, then I'm going to give my take.
First and foremost, shout out to Nico.
Most definitely, man.
I love, so dating back to last year, going into training camp, we had conversations and we said, hey, Nico looks faster. Mm-hmm. Nico looks looser. He just looks overall better. Mm-hmm. And I've been on record by saying this over and over again. What Nico is doing now isn't a surprise because we saw the potential last year. A few of us saw, Cody and I saw the potential last year. The quarterback situation just wasn't the greatest. And I also think now what we're looking at with Nico is a couple of things. I think a lot of people are starting to grade him, maybe unfairly, maybe fairly, because this is his first real year to put the production to numbers, put them together. And he's 9 yards away from 1,000. This is what happens when you have a quarterback and an offensive coordinator that can get you the ball. So going into this year, the need for wide receiver for this group was at an all-time high. Mm-hmm. I also want to say that I don't think Houston should target some of the favorite, like T. Higgins. I think Nico play has been so good to where, and also the Houston Texans, that's not a priority need for them. Still think D tackle, still think linebacker.
That's how good this wide receiving core has been. Right. Because I thought for sure that would have been their greatest need.
I got running back over wide receiver. And so the wide receiver on the totem pole right now for priority is at the bottom for me. But Nico has played well enough to just say, you know what? The need, not the want, the need for a big all-season acquisition of wide receiver is no longer needed. And that's also the most saturated position in the NFL. You can find a wide receiver just any day. T. Higgins is no longer needed in Houston. That said, no, Nico Collins is not a top 10 receiver. Nico Collins is having a top 10 year, but he is not a top 10 receiver in the NFL. I saw a list today, and it got up to like 28. A few of those names I didn't agree with, but overall, what we're doing is we're confusing the stats with the eye test, right? And I think it's happening more and more often as advanced metrics enter the NFL. The eye test for a lot of people still, matters more to some folks compared to the advanced metrics matters more. And this is no disrespect to Nico, but he is not a top 10 receiver. Mm-hmm. He's having a breakout year, and that year is putting him in discussions of now, let's see what's going on in Houston. Oh, you got Nico Collins, who has had a couple of 130 yard more games a few times. That's great. But is he better than Devontae Adams, top 10 receiver? Is he better than, the likes of Jettas, Jamar Chase? I think a lot of people say Garrett Wilson. Long story short, and I still think D-Hop at this point of his career is better. He just suffers from not having a quarterback. If D-Hop was in Houston, oh man, it would have been scary this year.
But D-Hop is different though. Put it like this, John.
D-Hop and Devontae is like one of those legacy receivers. We know how good you are. We know you're all pro and pro bowler, but I still think just like Devontae Adams, who had like what Devontae Adams went through this year is what Nico Collins went through his first 2 years.
Yeah, most
you
definitely.
saw the numbers decline, and now you see with Nico with a quarterback, you saw his number rise. But it's a year-to-year thing. Somebody said Amon St. Brown. I think he's a little better than Nico Collins. I also like how that offense uses him. He's having a top 10 year in terms of stats and numbers, but it's okay to say that and not say he's the top 10 receiver.
But I think he has a chance, though. Because look, hear this out.
I'm not doubting that, but we need to see year 3, year 4, year 5. I need to see them over the years.
Well, we definitely need to see it. However, we're actually talking about the now. So I literally made a list of top 10 wide receivers right off the bat, not named Nico Collins. And John, I think the first 6 are probably a given. Justin Jefferson, no. Tyreek Hill, heck no. He should be MVP if you ask me. Devontae Adams, no. Jamar Chase, no. Stephon Diggs, no. AJ Brown, no. This is why I think the conversation could potentially start.
I would also throw Devontae Smith in there. CeeDee Lamb is in there.
That's what I was going to get to. So I had Devontae Smith at 7. So it seemed like you were going to take Devontae Smith, right?
Yeah.
Then I had CeeDee Lamb.
CeeDee Lamb is in there.
Okay. Here's why I think it gets interesting. St. Brown.
See, I got St. Brown over Nico.
You got St. Brown over Nico?
Yeah, and here's
honestly on my list,
he's still a product of being in that system for 3 years. A proven quarterback, regardless of how anybody feels about Jared Goff. Jared Goff is 10 times better than what the Texans had here the first 2 years of Nico's career.
Yeah, it's true.
And a better offensive coordinator. So I think he's a product of that system, and because of that, he's been able to produce, which is why I didn't say we got to see year 1 and year 2 and then year 3. I said we got to see year 3, year 4, and year 5 from Nico to really make that adjustment and change to say whether or not you could be top 15 or whatever.
And at number 10, I was tied. I put a tie at number 10. DK Metcalf.
DK
Debo
is
Samuel.
in
And Debo.
Yeah, and Brandon Ayuk too. Oh no! Listen,
no, I'm just
Brandon Ayuk is
a
better receiver than Debo Samuels.
I mean, if you want to make that argument, so that's why I'm like, it's hard to say that he's top 10. But John, you said exactly what I was going to say for this conversation. I would say this year he's having a quote unquote statistical wise a top 10 year. I think what is Nico right now? I think he's like number 6 in the league.
He's 9 or 10 in
9 or 10. I mean, he's up there. So he's statistically speaking, this year alone, he's definitely a top 10 wide receiver. However, this receiving year as of right now has been deep because you also got to bring up guys like, and that's just guys that's like I would consider in Nico Collins' age group in generation. And
Keenan Allen is also in there. We got to put Keenan Allen in there.
And that's why I was going next. I was going to say, then you had guys who are definitely not in his generation, but who are still tearing it up. Keenan Allen, D-Hop, Mike Evans, who I think he cracked 1,000 every single year outside of his rookie season,
and
if I'm not mistaken.
This year with Baker Mayfield. So shout out to those two because
exactly.
I didn't think that was going to happen. I thought the streak was going to get broken.
But that's why I say I hate to have this conversation, a couple days when he's gonna reach a milestone. However, what I will say is 2 things. One, this just shows once again how good CJ Stroud is as a quarterback. But 2, and most importantly, I think if Nico Collins can consistently put up these type of productions for the Houston Texans, and we do not see him tail off, but actually get better, which I think he will. Then I think we're definitely going to have a real discussion, let's say in the next year or 2.
Yeah, and you know what? Another thing that's great for Nico, as he is number 10 in the NFL in passing yards. Receiving yards. He also has this year 6 TDs. So this is a complete career year for him. He's also averaging 17 yards per catch. The longest on the year for him is 59. He's averaging 90 yards a game. And he has
almost had 200. He almost had 200 last week.
Yeah, he got 422 yak yards. I think what we should be looking at is how does what he's producing this year impact the rest of the season and for Houston moving forward. And Houston has how many games has Houston played? They're 7-5 right now.
7-5.
So that's 12 games. This is week 14. Nico has played in 11 of the 12 games. That's last couple of years, his first 2 years in the league, he's missed games. So now you're seeing him healthy, right? Mm-hmm. You're seeing him do this. 991 yards on 59 catches, again, 17 yards per catch. What does that mean for Houston moving forward?
That's the
real question, because again, it goes back to the statement, and I know we're getting a little long-winded, but it goes back to the statement of this. Has Nico's play deterred off-season plans from targeting a big acquisition at their wide receiver position?
I would say yes.
I say yes. I think you find out for the next 5 games, you find out what your young bucks can do in different situations, because I could see next year Houston may just move on from Robert Woods. Houston may move on from Noah Brown. But you got to see what you can get out of the remaining wide receivers on this roster. You see what you can get out of Noah Brown and Tank Dell, my man, Coach Barnes on Twitter. I don't want to put his full name out there, but he's big on getting a speedster in the draft next year. I think that's smart. But with what Nico's doing right now, I don't believe Houston should sink a lot of money into T. Higgins in their wide receiver market. I don't. I think that you get a hometown discount with Nico. You save some money. You still have Tank Dell coming back next year. You still add to that position group, but you don't sink a lot of money into it. Also because it's not the biggest need for this team moving forward. All right, look, the game is on right now. We are recording on a Thursday night, right? Game is on, and I know it's not going to be a good game. But the Pats are playing. I feel like snacking on something. I don't want to leave the house. Everybody sleep. What am I going to do? DoorDash. Oh, that's right. DoorDash. Right now, you can get 50% off. 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app. Just enter promo code LOCK23. That's it. Listen. Halftime, DoorDash. Timeout, DoorDash. Why root for your team on an empty stomach? I'm not going to do that. So let's get on the same page here. Order on DoorDash. Save on football watch party favorites, and just save time. You don't want to miss a big moment in the game. You definitely don't want to miss that, especially when you got a team like the Houston Texans, unlike my team that I'm a fan of. The team that I love here in Houston, though, making a playoff push, you want to catch every second, every minute, every quarter of that game. So again, download the DoorDash app or create an account. Get 50% off up to $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. Just use promo code LOCKED23, LOCKED 23. So normally, and welcome back to the Locked On Texans podcast. Before we close out, normally we would go to the YouTube comments, but Twitter, social media on Thursday was kind of fun today. So shout out to Texas Twitter. You guys really keep my day going. The conversation came up of how hot Bobby Slowick's name will be this coming off season with the amount of anticipated head coaching jobs that will become available because of the amount of anticipated head coaching firings we'll see this offseason.
Wait. Let's take a moment and just give thanks that it doesn't involve Houston. Just a quick moment.
Bow your head. If you're driving, pull over. If you're watching at home, bow your head. It
doesn't involve Houston.
Amen.
Boy.
Amen. But I think this is a hot topic, a good topic, and I also think we need to circle back to it. I think this is a great way to close out the show, to kind of use this to kind of bridge it for next week. Especially to see how Bobby Slowick calls plays this upcoming Sunday, a game against a tough Jets defense. But we also know how the Falcons and the Panthers game ended. A lot of that we can look and say, hey, Bobby, the play calling was bad. But I will start off by saying this. 2 things. I don't think Bobby Slowick is going to leave. I think he understands that there's something great going on right here. Right? I think I look at Bobby the same way I looked at Ben Johnson last year. Ben Johnson was a hot name, even interviewed, but ultimately came back for the Detroit Lions. And look where the Lions are this year with year 2 in the system.
You're right about that.
So I'm looking at Bobby Slowick. I think it's smart for Bobby to kind of do the Nathaniel Hackett thing, kind of do some of the what's the guy always in, like the head coach that was with Peyton Manning. Just kind of attach your name to a very good coach, very good quarterback. And Houston has a very good quarterback here in Houston, is C.J. Stroud. Now, I also think that the conversation that we'll have next week, Cody, please let's remind me, if he does leave, Hoover would replace him. And I think that person is. I know that person is already in the building. By the way, shout out to my boy Bear. We've had some very good, candid conversations on and off social media in person. But I don't think it's time for Bobby to leave yet. This is some unfinished business, because you definitely want to maximize the potential with the team that you're at. And regardless of how this season ends, playoff run, unless they win the Super Bowl, I don't think the potential will be maximized. So I think he needs to come back. Year 2 of play calling, get comfortable as offensive coordinator. Year 2 of maybe getting more on your plate, but giving C.J. Stroud year 2, because if he continues to get better and better, kind of like Jared Goff, kind of like what we're seeing from St. Brown as a receiver, right? Some of these offenses, if you get these guys to perform again well, then you kind of setting yourself up for a good future.
I think one more year. I think Bobby definitely needs to stay one more year. However, John, it's going to be hard to keep him. And not only will it be hard to keep him, I think he's going to be tempted, because when you take a look at the league right off the top of my head, Chicago, Carolina, Washington, LA Chargers. That's 4 teams that I think could be that's going to go after Bobby Slowick hard, because all 4 of those teams either are in a position to draft a new quarterback, or they have a quarterback already in the building that they believe in, i.e. the Carolina Panthers. And Bobby Slowick has, quote, the background of working with young quarterbacks and helping them develop. Remember, I said that on the show back when the Texans hired him as the offensive coordinator. A lot of people in San Francisco gave him a lot of praise for the development that we saw out of Brock last year, and that has continued on this year. We've seen that C.J. Stroud is putting together one of, if not the best year for a rookie quarterback. And there are several teams around the league, i.e. the Carolina Panthers, depending on what Washington and Chicago do. It's like, you know what? I want you to create some of that magic for our young quarterbacks. However, I think the biggest test is going to be the Los Angeles Chargers, because Justin Herbert, he's already there. So they might be looking at it from a standpoint, we already got our franchise cornerstone in place. We are, more established than the rest of these vacancies. But if you could get Herbert to the next level, then that could be something that could be definitely great.
And I wonder if Bobby would take was it Shane Day back with him? I'm thinking the same day of Bill Lazor. One of them was over in with the Chargers already.
I can't remember.
The same day. And I think it's interesting before we close out. Eric Bieniemy is going to be a hot name, and I think that the Washington, whatever they want to call themselves, they need to just move on from Riverboat Run and go ahead and promote Eric Bieniemy, the head coach. I think Ben Johnson is a name that I think after this year, again, maximize his potential, came back for another year. I can see him going to Carolina and kind of getting a D'Amico type of deal. No matter what happens in this first couple of seasons, you're going to be our head coach for a while, because we can't afford another firing. We know how bad Dave Tepper's been. So I do look around the league, and I'm wondering, man, who's going to bounce, who's going to stay. But I definitely think that Bobby Slowick should stay in Houston. And if he does not, again, we'll follow up next week by talking about who's a replacement and why he's already in-house. Thank you guys for listening to today's episode. It's a good show, good conversation. I'm going to tell y'all, we freestyled the show. So thank y'all for listening to today's episode, where we just had an opportunity to talk Texas and talk football and talk sports. So we didn't have to put a lot of numbers out there, just kind of talking to each other like we're at the barbershop a little bit. Make sure you guys subscribe to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube. Like us as well. Comment as well. Follow me on X at John_Hickman12. Cody, I think I'm going to get in and start a Thread account.
Oh, wow. Thread is dead. Thread was hot for that month after X tried to charge everybody to use their Thread was only hot when
2 weeks.
When X had put a limit on how many tweets you can see in a day. Man. That was wild. Thankfully, that didn't
day.
last. That was a bad day. That was a day of free agency too, and everything was just bad. But as always, you can follow me on Twitter, X, Thread at Cody Davis _24. Once again, that's Cody COTYDAVIS _24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.